Thank you a lot for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm Alyse, and I'm here interviewing the artist and professor from California, Mr. Justin Tuerk, and your mom, Miss Tuerk, is our art teacher here at the middle school. So I read in your letter you work as an art professor at the University of California in San Diego for photography and printmaking. Can you describe a typical day in your job?
So I'm not technically a professor. I guess my technical position is an instructional tech support. So it's kind of like a professor. So I don't actually teach the classes, but I'm there as a technical teacher. So I don't lead the class, but for example, in kind of the photography class, I'm there to kind of teach the students the technical side of developing and printing their photos, and so it's a little different, but it's still a kind of really fun job because I don't have to deal with the bureaucracy of being a full-time professor kind of thing, but I specifically just work with the students and get to help them realize their projects.
Yeah, that sounds really fun because then you don't have to deal with like all of the students coming at you, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I still get that, but it's more so on like if they come to me if they have a problem,
Yeah.
and then I work with them to try and kind of find that solution, or teach them the skill so that they can kind of solve that problem. And so I actually get to do a great deal of teaching, but in kind of the realm I prefer.
That sounds like you have more freedom.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, what's your funniest moment that you've ever had in your class?
So one of the more kind of ridiculous moments in the dark room is because film is light sensitive.
Yeah.
So essentially, when you remove it from the camera, you have to load it into a tank where you can dump your chemistry into to develop it, and you have to do that in complete darkness. Uh, um, but yeah, back before COVID, when we were doing that, we had a woman that loaded her tank, developed it, and then after she finished kind of the developing and the fixing and the drying of the film, noticed that there were kind of light spots all down the film, and it turned out that her nail polish was glow in the dark, so that affected the film.
Oh no.
Which is like, luckily, like, it's an undergrad class, so it was like what she shot wasn't super important.
Yeah.
But it was it was a fun kind of moment in class to be like, yep, it's that light sensitive that the little bit of nail polish that glows in the dark would affect the outcome of that film.
Wow, that's crazy. I never would have thought that glow in the dark nail polish would affect film.
Yep.
I know, like when you open the door and stuff, it can affect the photos, but
yeah, if you got like a full on kind of blast of light, it would wipe out the entire film. So like this, luckily, like, and you can make adjustments and and there were certain frames that weren't, but like ever so often it's like, wherever her kind of nails were when she grabbed the film to load it into the tank, were just like, just enough to change the kind of the intensity of that spot.
Yeah, that sucks, but it's also really funny.
Yeah. So it's like, we had to have that discussion in class and be like,
yeah, don't wear glow in the dark nail polish
yeah,
when you're developing your photos. So you mentioned in your letter you're responsible for the photo darkroom, digital print lab, screen printing studio, printmaking studio, graphic design, and bookbinding studio, as well as working on the sound art recording studio. Can you tell me more about having that amount of responsibility and what it's like to have the roles of those responsibilities? Because that's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's our team here is pretty small. Other universities have more kind of techs to help. So a lot of the kind of stuff that goes on here, we kind of all have to work together. there's four of us on the kind of technical staff. So like, you know, we have to kind of split up where we can. I just happen to have backgrounds in all of that.
Wow.
And that's the kind of art that I work with in my personal kind of life.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was I've actually started to build up in the last year. So I started just over a year ago here, and when I showed up, there were a lot of students that were interested in these kind of things. And since I was the one that knew how to kind of do it, I was like, well, let's make it.
Yeah, that
Um,
sounds like a lot, especially when
yeah,
you're first starting.
yeah. So like, you know, I primarily was hired for the photo.
Yeah.
But then kind of when I got here, there was they had bought some equipment for screen printing, but no one knew how to use it.
Yeah.
So since I kind of ran a screen printing shop for a number of years, um, I was like, well, I can put it together and kind of put that on, and then um, we're slowly expanding to kind of do relief, like kind of woodcut prints and lino cuts,
Ooh, that sounds fun.
uh, and then I do a lot of bookmaking, especially with my photography. So we got a grant that we were able to kind of update some of the facilities. So we had a little over $100,000 to spend on equipment, and I was like, "Can we buy a bookbinder?" And people were really into it. So I'm kind of slowly putting that together. One of the professors here had a risograph, which is um, it's a duplicator, but it's kind of like a photocopier, but
Yeah.
instead of the photocopy material, like the toner, it's set up more like kind of an offset press or a screen printing, that it creates a little stencil and it
Yeah.
pushes rice-based ink through it, which is
Ooh.
similar to kind of the newspaper print. So
Yeah.
it's super cheap, which is why it became the artist's like thing back in the 90s. It was super popular, the zine culture, and like kind of all the kind of bands would use it to create posters. So it's become kind of this artist's tool, uh, because it's not used super prevalently to make photocopies anymore. Uh, and you can, and it's got these big kind of drums that you slide in like torpedoes
Oh, I think I've seen those
into it.
before.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Yeah.
It's just like this big, they're kind of like this big and round like that. And
That's
then you
awesome.
just slide it right into the machine, and that's the color that it prints.
That's
So,
cool.
so like you could take a black and white photo and put it onto the machine and print it in red if you
That's
want.
really neat.
So like, you know, that's now part of kind of the graphic design bookbinding area.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm a musician as well, and have
Oh,
worked as kind
really?
of a recording artist. So there was a sound room, but it was kind of basically just being used as a band practice room.
Yeah.
The grad students had a band, or several of the grad students put a band together. So
Yeah.
they were the only ones using it because it wasn't really set up the way that we needed to.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'll build out the recording studio, and so it's been a busy year.
Yeah. Sounds really busy.
Yeah, and then kind of on the photo side, I'm in charge of both the digital and the dark room. So so all the digital printing, as well as kind of all the fun kind of analog photography.
Yeah. That it's awesome that you can give a lot of the students to do different, like the opportunity to do a lot of those different things. Because I know as somebody who's interested in art, like if I got the opportunity to be able to try all of those, that would be really awesome.
Yeah, and I'm very much kind of a proponent that um, you know, you use what the best tool to create your kind of vision is
Yeah.
that's available. You know, there's no one thing that's better or worse.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like there's still the kind of the discussion on what's better, digital photography or film photography.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it depends on what you're doing with it. You know, what is the end goal, and that's what I try and kind of teach. is like, if it makes sense to use digital, then go use digital.
Yeah.
But like, if film is required for the aesthetic or whatever you're doing, then it's like, then it has to be film.
Yeah, I do a lot of drawing. There's a lot of debate on whether like traditional on paper is better and like in a sketchbook, or drawing on like an iPad or a computer is better.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same kind of like, why does it have to be one or the other?
Yeah, I do both, so I don't really see the difference.
Like, but like, the difference between what you can do on
Yeah.
iPad versus a tablet versus what you can achieve on paper. And
Yeah.
it's like, so you're gonna, if you have specific kind of needs, you're gonna go use the one that will meet those needs.
Exactly. Yeah. Depending on what piece you want to do, it really depends.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, and I'm kind of, well, normally my week is I'm here Monday to Friday, kind of 7:30 to 4, and so I'll just pop into any of the classes that might need help, or just around, so that students can kind of come and they can shoot me an email, or if I'm here, just show up and kind of have questions. And so we have kind of 2 facilities, well, 3 buildings that we kind of operate in. So there's Mandeville, which is kind of all the undergrad classes, the visual arts facility, which is where my office is, which is where kind of the most of the studios are, and all of the graduate students have their own individual studios around here.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so it's like this
your own little space.
Yeah, so like, and then the space I'm in is like the same size that the graduate students get.
Wow, that's really a lot of
they
work.
Get their own room with a locking door, which is not normally a thing that exists for grad students. Pretty nice facility, and it's Southern California, so all of the doors open to the outside. There's no hallways, so it's kind of interesting to that I could just prop my door open and it's right outside and get fresh air. And
that must be nice.
I'm still kind of adjusting to the fact that people call the mid 50s, high 50 degrees cold here.
That is not that cold.
Nope. Yeah, when I got here and they were like, oh man, like, the temperature inside the studio is 60 degrees. And I was like, and?
Isn't that what a normal room usually is?
Yeah, apparently not.
Yeah, well, it's probably because it's all hot all year round over there.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it'll get chilly in the winter, but it's moderate most of the time. Like,
I was gonna say, you probably don't have to wear puffy jackets.
No, I got rid of all my winter clothes.
So, what is the most challenging part of your work?
Egos. Dealing with egos, both from kind of faculty and from students. Because like, there's this kind of, I think, misconception that when you're in graduate school, you should know all the things.
Yeah.
So there's definitely students that kind of mask their insecurities because they don't know it, and so trying to kind of break through that and be like, it's okay if you don't know it, like, that's why I'm here to help you.
Exactly. You're not going to know everything.
So there's some kind of contention that happens sometimes, and then just kind of juggling the needs of everybody and who gets addressed in what order, kind of like, the importance of what they are asking for, because sometimes what they're asking for is not important, or not as important as another thing, and trying to kind of balance it's a never-ending kind of list of things I have to accomplish and work on. So it's that becomes the challenge. Yesterday was a good example of that. I had a list of the things I was hoping to do, and I got one of those done before I got pulled away to deal with other people's issues. So I ended up not getting kind of anything done that I was hoping to get done. so that becomes kind of the hardest part is just time, you know.
Yeah, trying to manage everything is probably a lot.
Yeah.
Especially when you have to, your own art, and not only that, but you want to, you want to accomplish your own projects, and you also have to help other people with theirs. So.
Yeah, and because my kind of office studio is quite nice, I tend to stay kind of an hour or more, after my shift, and I'll
Yeah.
work on my own stuff. And then that becomes a whole nother issue of like, I'm not working right now. Email me and I'll deal with it tomorrow.
Yeah.
When you see me around here, that's like, oh, I've got a quick question. And, a lot of times a quick question is not so quick.
Yeah. What is the best experience that you've had in your job?
I love kind of working with students and helping them kind of reach kind of a new level for themselves. I mean, graduate students are coming in at a pretty high level. So it's a lot of time it's just helping with kind of the technical side,
Yeah.
and logistics of how to accomplish their idea. But working with the undergrad students, specifically kind of in photography, and like kind of helping them figure out how to do the developing and all that. But then from that, the idea of what they're photographing, and uh, uh, turning them on to kind of new photographers and artists that they didn't know about. Because it's clear like what they're photographing and what their interests are in, and just, I've got and then you can see kind of right there, that's all photo books, and I've got a huge shelf of other photo books, and I can just pop into my office and be like, you need to know this artist.
That's always cool. I think my favorite thing about social media is you can find a lot of different artists on there. Like, I look at other people's pages and it's like pictures of celebrities, and mine is all art, and it's like, I don't understand.
Yeah, and it's the internet has been wonderful for that, but the double-edged sword of the internet is that you can find everything, but also there's everything there. So
exactly, yeah,
knowing where to start is where to look is the hardest part of the internet. And that's part of my personality. Is I've always been someone that likes to, like, oh, you're into this, you should look at this.
Yeah, I do that too.
And then that moment that they're just like, oh, how did I not know about this?
Yeah.
And sends them on this kind of wonderful kind of rabbit hole of learning new information, whether that be kind of visual imagery or music or just historical kind of information. I like to say that I'm kind of an armchair historian. I started my undergrad degree in history, but I ultimately kind of went various other things, but ended up in art.
That's cool.
But history has always been a huge passion of mine. And because everything that you're interested in has a history, and that history is important.
I agree.
So I always kind of stress to I think a lot of my kind of photography knowledge is historic based. So I'm not the best for contemporary and what's happening, which is great because one of the photo professors here, Paul Sapuya, who's kind of a rock star in the current kind of photo world, he's amazing on contemporary. So he brings kind of all these contemporary artists that are doing things, and then I will bring books on, here's a historic kind of photographer, which is this is what eventually leads to this, and those connections are kind of are important to kind of understand and then apply to how you're going to change your own work in the future.
it's good to have a variety of people to be able to, you know, explore in every single genre.
Of course, yeah.
In the letter you mentioned you work in photography, printmaking, sound performance, and video in your personal art. What is your favorite art to create, like your favorite media?
Um, yeah, I jump around a lot.
Yeah.
Specifically because like I'll get bored easily.
Yeah.
Um, and which is why I do so many different art mediums, because when I'm not interested in working with kind of photography, then I can go and work on sound.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Um, uh, so I tend to go through kind of really intense moments of working with one, and then I won't touch it for maybe 8 months,
Yeah.
and while I focus on another thing. And it's so for me it's very sorry, hang on a second.
It's all good.
um, I'm very project based.
Yeah.
I'll get an idea on what project I want to kind of work on,
Yeah.
And then I just decide, well, what medium am I going to use to accomplish that?
Yeah.
Or a combination of them.
Ooh,
So
always fun.
I actually started in kind of an artist collective with one of my best friends, Eddie Miramontes. We met in Boston, and he's originally from San Diego. And so he actually was the one that kind of introduced me to the team here at University of California, San Diego, and I ultimately got the job that way. So the Paragon Collective, we kind of do performance-based, where we incorporate a lot of printmaking, photography, video, and most of our performance base is very heavily influenced on sound and music. So it's kind of a way to kind of take everything that of my interests and kind of funnel it into one big project. And we kind of do those once every few years. We'll do a kind of a big project.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. When you get so hyper fixated on one project, you just forget about everything else.
Yeah, and it's like I think it allows you to kind of stretch your creativity because you're not focusing on kind of the same thing consistently, which will kind of dull your kind of sense of creativity. Like you won't stretch as much. And there's things to be said about people that do the one thing and they become absolute masters at it.
Yeah.
I don't care for myself to do that.
Yeah.
Like I consistently challenge myself, but I want new challenges.
Yeah.
I'm perfectly happy with being pretty good at a lot of different things.
Yeah. I totally get that. I'm somebody who's pretty good at a lot of different things. And it's like, I wish I had that one thing that I could kind of focus on and work on, but I also enjoy all of those other things. So that's why I don't pressure myself.
Yeah, no. And I think that's a problem that a lot of people have, is that they put that pressure on themselves. And so it becomes a lot of anxiety from like, oh, I have to do this thing. And if you've chosen to, that's fine.
Yeah.
But the kind of the idea that you have to just because that's the way it's been done is a fallacy that, so what?
Yeah, who really cares? I mean, as long as you're having fun.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, can you tell me about some of your personal projects, specifically the road trip photography one you did, from the article you sent? I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So, the summer in between my 2 years at grad school, I set off and I wanted to do a big road trip.
Yeah.
I'm someone that always likes to travel and experience new places,
Traveling.
uh, and just see what's out there.
Yeah.
Uh, I was fortunate enough when I was kind of younger. I got to travel to Europe quite a bit.
Wow, that's awesome.
And uh, so I got to photograph Scotland for 2 weeks back in I think 2011, 2008, something like that, a while ago.
Yeah.
So I did a book on kind of that, on the Hebrides, which are kind of the islands northwest of Scotland.
That's
Skye and Harris and Lewis, and it's the places that when you think of Scotland, that's what you think of.
yeah.
Where Braveheart was filmed, where all the kind of outside stuff for Harry Potter was filmed.
Yes.
Yeah,
Cool.
so I got to go on the Jacobite steam train, which was
That's
used
so
as the Hogwarts
cool.
Express.
Oh,
That was a lot of fun. And but I wanted to kind of explore a lot of the states that I hadn't seen, because I'd been to all the East Coast states, and kind of some of the others in the West, but I really hadn't seen a lot of uh, um, the middle kind of part and southwest of the country. So I also tend to kind of base my projects in kind of either a historic or a literary reference.
Yeah.
But well, if I'm going to do a road trip, like, it'd be cool if I could follow one of the great road trip novels.
Oh, that would be awesome. Yeah, that's really neat.
So I kind of narrowed it down to like some of the, like, because there's a wonderful kind of a plethora of great road trip novels.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, some of the two most important ones are John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie and Jack Kerouac's On the Road. Whereas Steinbeck's book was kind of he was revisiting the place that he'd been when he was younger.
Yeah.
With his dog Charlie.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like an end of career kind of road trip novel.
Yeah.
Where Kerouac's was, he'd just kind of gotten out of the military, early 50s.
Yeah.
And still quite young, and traveled the country to kind of learn about it. And I was like, well, that's kind of what I'm doing. So it would make the most sense to kind of go and kind of recreate that trip. So any reference in the book to a specific place, I then mapped out. And then tried to look at, like, okay, historically, what were the roads in the 50s that were available between this point and this point? So what did he most likely take? And then just tried to stay as close to that as possible. And I gave myself kind of the rule that I was allowed to drive at most an hour outside of that road.
Yeah.
So I could still see things that weren't expressly on that road, but because he spent a lot of time in San Francisco, and it doesn't exactly say where he went. So it's like that's enough, like, a leeway to be like, okay, well, like, I'm on Route 30 across the north of the country. So it was kind of from New York to Chicago to into kind of Omaha, Nebraska, into Wyoming, down to Colorado, back up to Wyoming, through Salt Lake City to San Francisco, then down through the center of California to Los Angeles, and then back going through kind of Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, all the way through Pennsylvania and back to New York.
That's so that's so cool. I mean, honestly, if I could go on a trip like that, I love traveling. I want to live in a bus when I get older. Like, I want to transform it into a house.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so I spent 7 weeks and photographed it all on film. And uh, uh, outside of, if I had friends in the city, I would stay with them.
Yeah.
If it was too dangerous, or what I learned in the kind of the Southwest, too hot to sleep in the
Yeah.
car, I basically just kind of had a bedroll in the back of the car and slept that way for most of the trip, and then would just get a kind of a motel when it wasn't safe, or
Yeah.
well, I was in Temecula. No, sorry, I was just outside of Coachella, California,
Yeah.
uh, and it didn't get below 93 at night. So that was the night I was like, well, maybe it's time to not sleep in the car.
And you did this for your thesis, right?
Partial of my
Okay.
thesis. That was my original intention to be my thesis, and then I was going to just make this a book. Um,
Cool.
and But then when I kind of got back, right before I left on the trip is when I met Eddie, and we did a kind of a music project.
Yeah.
We called it the Paragon Collective Show, or Paragon Records Showcase, and we had kind of 3 musical acts. A
Cool.
student, another student that was in the class that we met in, did a project that she performed, and then there were 2 kind of bands that I put together. One of non-musicians, uh, and one of musicians, but the musicians weren't allowed to know who else was in the band, and they were not allowed to talk to each other. I handed the singer a stack of poems as their lyrics, and I said no song could be over 6 minutes long, and go. And it was a really fun night, and kind of great experiments. So uh, Eddie and I, when I kind of got back from the trip, we were just like, let's do something really big.
Yeah.
So we did a really kind of big performance, that had kind of 5 different performances in it, and kind of an evening of performances, all kind of that dealt with the audience's interaction with
Yeah.
kind of music. Um, and So that technically was my thesis, but we created in order to present that at the show, because we did it like, a month and a half before the thesis kind of show, the group show.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, so we had that on the TV, but we were like, yeah, that'd be kind of boring just to kind of have that there and be like, oh yeah, I'm done. So we made a record store,
That's
in
cool.
the little kind of space that I was given, um,
Yeah.
in which we kind of brought in a bunch of sound art and music from other kind of students at the school, and we produced like, the covers for it,
Yeah.
and then all of the kind of sound stuff that I had been working on, as well as books. So then I had my book there, but it
Yeah.
was kind of ended up being a smaller part because I wasn't satisfied with how much work. I guess I wanted to do more.
Yeah. It's always better to strive for more, unless you're
Yeah,
overworking yourself.
for sure. Yeah.
But so what kind of like things do you like to photograph? You said there was a certain media you were interested in photographing.
Yeah. I kind of jump back and forth between a lot of things. I mean, the overarching thing that I'm ultimately interested in is the passage of time,
Yeah.
and kind of the evidence of time. Um, uh, but I do kind of photograph a lot of nature-based things, landscapes, uh, but also kind of I'm really fascinated by the evidence of humans. So the spaces that they choose to occupy and the things that they change or leave behind.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of apply the same kind of aesthetic of landscapes that you would kind of a mountain range to kind of factory buildings.
That's awesome.
Or kind of like, empty houses, or it's like I don't particularly enjoy photographing people.
Yeah, I can.
Outside of kind of, if it's a busy kind of area or city, like I enjoy using people as a kind of compositional element, but I'm not interested in that person.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
As much as that person is a shape that makes up the composition.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I would rather take pictures of like nature and probably, landscapes and stuff.
Yeah, I'm just working on a new book. A couple years ago, I went up to Newfoundland and photographed the icebergs.
That's awesome.
So so it was, and to me, kind of like that iceberg is the representation of passage of time, because it's, it was on Greenland, on the glaciers of Greenland, for anywhere from 10 to 100,000 years. And then it breaks off and floats down, and takes about 2 years to float from Greenland to the top of Newfoundland.
Yeah.
And then it'll run aground, it'll hit the bottom of the ocean and get stuck there. And then in 2 months, it's dissolved.
Wow.
So it's like this really interesting kind of play on time.
Yeah. So, how is the pandemic affecting your job as an artist?
Oh, it's not great.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm back to kind of partial remote. So I'm 3 days a week I'm here on campus. And we're now kind of pretty well into now opening things back up again. Most, I think all but kind of 2 of the classes in visual arts is taught remotely.
Yeah.
So there's 2 that kind of have, partial kind of meet in person.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of in the discussion of what the winter quarter is going to look like after the holiday. But for the graduate students, they now have access to their studios again.
Yeah.
And some of the production facilities. So the majority of my and the team that I'm a part of work we've done over the last kind of 4 months has been kind of gearing up and figuring out how to safely open some of these spaces, like the dark room or the wood shop or the metal shop or ceramics and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so most of your classes are in person, or no?
So there's very few people on campus.
Yeah, I'm assuming mostly teachers and staff, right?
Yeah, pretty much. There's some students that are living on campus.
Yeah.
And you'll see them around, but for the majority, their classes are all held via Zoom.
Yeah. So the graduates have access to their studios, and that's it, right?
Yeah. So we're the only department in the arts and humanities that are opening spaces. Some of the other ones are starting to, now that we were the guinea pigs.
Yeah.
And it was kind of and it was almost entirely because kind of the grad students and the faculty were kind of pushing hard, and we figured out a kind of a way to kind of do it with all of the new precautions, and it took a lot of time, but and what does this look like now, and how many people can be in a room at one time, so and then how do you kind of sign up for times? So I built a whole calendar system of all this.
Cool.
And you're allowed to kind of sign up for so many spaces in a row, and be as equitable as possible for everybody. And So
Well, it's good that the students still have the opportunity to go into the building and use some of the facilities because as you said, there was a lot of facilities that they would be able to have access to if it was normal. So it's good that you're still giving them that access because, having the opportunity to use some of those to create art, would always be cool.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like a lot of students were able to kind of just do their own work in their own space.
Yeah.
Especially kind of painters or
Yeah.
all the arts that don't require kind of specialized pieces of equipment.
Yeah, I know. As somebody who does that kind of stuff, you just need your markers in or whatever, whatever you're using. You got your paper, canvas, iPad, whatever you're using, and you just sit. So how is your area specifically handling COVID? Like where you live?
Mostly well.
Oh.
Kind of some of the outlying kind of small towns outside of San Diego, not so much.
Yeah.
There's a very large kind of population of anti-maskers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that thinks that the whole thing is a hoax.
Yeah.
Similar to, I'm sure, around.
Yeah, I went to a diner. Nobody was wearing a mask. None of the staff or anything. And it was like.
Yeah. Luckily, kind of the city of San Diego was fairly vigilant about it. So I don't see, and luckily, like kind of where I live, because San Diego is huge.
Yeah.
25 miles north to south.
Yeah. Big.
Yeah. And so I work in the north part of San Diego and I live in the south part of San Diego.
Oh, okay.
It's not the greatest, but so I live 4 miles from the border of Mexico. And so I live kind of right on the cusp of Imperial Beach and South San Diego. And it's kind of a really weird but interesting and fun kind of neighborhood. But it's typically where all of the essential workers live.
Well, that's cool.
So like all the people that work in the restaurants and whatnot live around me. It's a very working class neighborhood. So all of them are kind of very vigilant about. But then I early on in the kind of pandemic, I drove up to Coronado Island, which is the very ritzy, fancy place. Apparently, you used to have to get there via just a ferry, and they only put a bridge in, a couple decades ago. Because it literally was like where the wealthiest people went, so poor people couldn't get to the island.
My gosh, that's so extra.
It's still kind of that mentality.
Whoa.
And so just to because I went out a little bit to kind of photograph the city when it was all locked down.
Yeah.
Went up to Coronado once, and I was like, well, not going there again, because I just drove by the beach and there were 50 people without masks just walking next to the beach because they weren't allowed on the beach.
Oh my gosh.
It was at the worst time. This was back in kind of
the
May.
beginning. Yeah, I was gonna say I went to the beach over summer and everybody was kind of spread out, but at the beginning it was bad. I was gonna say when I went the numbers were not bad at all, but
yeah, no. So it was a challenge. UCSD is handling it really well.
That's good.
I feel comfortable coming here because they've got a symptom checker, anyone that comes to campus has to kind of basically state that they aren't feeling any of these symptoms.
Yeah.
They keep the amount of people on campus down, so that it's a 25% occupancy.
That's good.
And they're testing wastewater because apparently the virus shows up in wastewater before you'll feel symptoms. So, which has worked really well because they're like, hey, in this building between like, Thursday evening and Saturday morning, like, the COVID virus was detected basically in someone's poop.
Yeah.
So then it's like, if you went to the bathroom in that building, go get tested.
Yeah.
So they're catching it quite early, and UCSD is a big hospital school.
Yeah.
Uh, it's one of the hospitals that is trying to find kind of a vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we go get tested every 2 weeks for free.
I hate those tests. They're annoying. I've gotten 2 of them in like the last month because I've gotten sick and they suck.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. The first one I got, the guy was I don't know, trying to mummify me or something.
Yeah.
Poke my brain with it, but
Yeah. Weird. I almost pulled away from the one lady. She was like, "You have to stay still." Would you handle not? I mean, you said you like the way the school's handling it, but would you handle it specifically like differently than anywhere else that you live near where you live?
I mean, there are decisions that are being made for financial decisions.
Yeah.
Like they tried really hard to get as many kind of students into the dorms as
Yeah.
possible. And there's this, but this is kind of like a cultural issue with the United States
Yeah.
that I have with the United States, that if you don't make a profit, they view it as losing money.
Yep.
Like, you're not losing money, you're just not gaining
Money. Yeah.
and that makes some bad decisions. I think UCSD kind of looked at San Diego State University. I think that's the one.
Yeah.
That opened and did in person way early.
Oh.
There were like 600 cases that happened. It was something ridiculous, like hundreds of cases in the matter of like 2 weeks, because all the students were having parties and
Yeah,
stuff.
if you're in college, I mean, if you let that many kids on campus, they're gonna have sorority parties and stuff.
Yeah, so I think kind of that, and UCSD starts later than other schools. It's on a quarter system, not a semester system, so it doesn't start till the end of September.
Okay.
So at the beginning of September, this happened at the other university in town. So I think like that was the moment they were just like, oh, we have to rethink some things, and they did. But it was like all of those decisions shouldn't have been left to like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Late. But they ultimately made the right decision.
Yeah.
And I understand kind of the financial decisions, but it's human lives, and that's
exactly. Yeah.
Has to be the only decision at first.
Exactly. I think.
And then once that decision is like, okay, how can we kind of stop the bleeding on financials?
Exactly. I feel like you should definitely be worrying human lives over the amount of money that you're making.
Yeah.
So I saw that in the letter that you are in control of some of the COVID-19 procedures. How are you handling that?
Stressful. Luckily, this so I have an immediate supervisor, Lucas, and then we have a kind of a higher up boss that's in charge of all the kind of administrative stuff of the visual art. And actually our kind of CAO, the Chief Administrative Officer of Visual Arts, retired back in the spring. I think probably because like she's like, I don't want to deal with this stuff, so I don't blame her. She's ready for retirement kind of anyway. So we had kind of an interim boss that officially is now our full-time kind of boss.
Yeah.
She's really amazing. So she kind of set the precedent that we're not in charge of the spaces COVID-wise.
Yeah.
So so our name isn't on kind of any of the documents.
Yeah.
So that can't come back to us.
Yeah.
Something happens, which I'm relieved about.
Yeah.
But we are kind of there to kind of guide all of the procedures and kind of making sure that all of the rooms have, all the PPE and sanitizer and then kind of I'm kind of in charge of all of the kind of calendaring systems for people to reserve the spaces in the rooms.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of Excel spreadsheets, basically.
Yeah. So, you live in San Diego. Can you tell me about the wildfires and everything that goes on with those? And I know that there was one that happened recently. I don't know if it's still going on or not, but
There's up north. There's I think they're mostly kind of handled.
yeah, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure that they're not big if they're still going on.
Yeah, we had one that was east of San Diego, but it was on the other side of the mountain range. So there was no danger of it getting to San Diego, and that's one thing that I kind of learned as I got here is that
Yeah.
we don't get the wildfires, but we will get they'll get close.
Yeah. You'll get the smoke too.
And we'll get some of the smoke and kind of the weird lighting issues. But because San Diego is a desert,
Yeah.
just outside of the city, it's a desert. There's nothing to burn.
Yeah.
So we're pretty well isolated that way. I know the one that was just east of here that was pretty big, and it's in one of the national forests, and it kind of spread quite quickly.
I'm pretty sure it took down most of the trees, or it
a
made
lot.
them go extinct, I think.
And it was a gender reveal party.
Are you serious?
That's what started it. Is someone had the explosive to set off the smoke, and then it caught the field on fire. And then,
my gosh.
Yeah, so none of us were kind of happy about it around here. Because that's the kind of the thing that I'm learning is that wildfire season is like snow season back east.
Yeah.
That's or hurricane season.
Yeah.
And it's the end of the summer into the fall, it's super dry.
You have to be careful.
There will be fires, and
Yeah.
it's how bad it. And this year was kind of, I think, the worst on record.
Wow, really? I know that last year there was a huge amount of them last year. I remember I'm somebody who enjoys watching videos about that kind of stuff and conspiracy videos, so I was watching a lot of videos on it and it seemed like they were awful. They took down complete towns.
Yeah. Last year was bad. This year was worse. I don't remember what the kind of the new number was, but the last time I had heard it was something over 2 million acres were burned.
Wow, that's so much land. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, and that's unfortunately a new normal.
It's really sad.
With climate change and stuff, it's it's gonna get worse.
Yeah. So, what do you wish you knew when you were in not necessarily grad school, but just school in general?
School in general, to not care about what other people think.
Yeah.
That's the big one. And it's the cliche to say, but it really is true.
It is.
And the other, the other thing is that the metrics of success are lies. What we are told on what it is to be successful.
Yeah.
Is right for some people and are completely wrong for others.
Yeah.
And no more is that true than in the arts. There is this belief that to be a successful artist, you have to be shown in galleries and sell a lot and blah blah blah, make money from your art.
Yeah.
That is a form of success, but me, I don't like the gallery world.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's not good,
Yeah.
um, or that I'm better or worse than it.
Yeah.
Uh, I think there's a misconception that, like, when I or kind of anyone do that, it's like, oh, I don't believe in that world, and it's like I refuse uh, to work in that world.
Yeah.
There's this kind of belief that I'm, like, or anyone making that statement believes themselves to be superior, and
Yeah.
that is not the case. The case is that, like, that's not the way that I like to operate.
Yeah.
So I've just decided that that's not going to be the thing that I do. Um, and since kind of coming out of undergrad, I kind of made that decision that it's just like, my goal and what I view as me being successful
Yeah.
is hopefully doing a job that I really enjoy
Yeah.
and use the skills that I've learned to pay all the bills and afford me the ability to work on the projects that I want to work on.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm almost there financially. Like, that could always be better, um, but like, what ultimately makes me the happiest is that, like,
Exactly.
the type of photography that I'm doing is not kind of in vogue in the gallery world right now. And my response to that is okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to change what I'm interested in creating in order to
To get in the gallery.
fit into that world.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the biggest thing that, and you will experience that for the, like, if you continue doing art, it's like all of you, like, a lot of your professors kind of in every stage is because that is the world that they live in,
Yeah.
the world that they kind of perpetuate.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them will completely understand if you don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Others will take it as a personal offense, and it becomes a kind of a weird kind of balancing act on kind of how to navigate that,
Yeah.
which is fine, like, and it's very doable.
Yeah.
But you ultimately just find the professors you want to work with and the teachers that you want to work with that support your vision.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like as a teacher, whether they want to be in a gallery or not, you should always support the art that they're making, because, like, I personally would. I'm not interested in having my art showcased to the whole entire world. Not everybody needs to see it. If you like it, then cool. You like my art, but the whole world doesn't need to approve.
Yeah, and like, I mean, the art world is kind of very, very much kind of elitist gatekeepers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that spills into kind of how it's taught at a
Yeah.
university and graduate level. And you kind of just have to, you know, not necessarily fight against it, but take what you want out of it,
Yeah.
and hold that dear, and kind of try enough things early and often so that you fail a lot, because in failures you learn what you want to do better, or what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So, like, I was kind of lucky enough that, having the mom that I did, Miss Tuerk,
Yeah.
kind of instilled that into me. So, like, I tried a lot of things very quickly, so that when I got to the point where I needed to kind of make those decisions, I knew what I wanted, and that's what I would work towards.
Yeah.
Or I at least knew what I didn't want,
Yeah.
and I'd try everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you change anything about your school years, when you were in school?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I like to kind of have I've had discussions with kind of friends before is like, I don't have good memories of my kind of grade school years.
Yeah.
They sucked. And like, they can for you. Like, it depends on how, like, how, like, and that's okay. Like, they could be great, but like them being terrible or not fun uh, is uh, is also fine because
Yeah.
Ultimately it doesn't matter aside from how you build yourself as a person.
Yeah, it's, no matter how many times you fail or embarrassing moments or whatever, it's going to build your character and build you as a person. At least it should.
Yeah. And like and I have this kind of wealth of knowledge that regularly kind of people ask or make comments, and it's just like, oh man, like, how do you know all this stuff?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I had a really terrible social life when I was a child, so I spent my time kind of learning things.
Yep.
And occupied my time with like trying different things and learning things and reading a lot and watching documentaries or whatever, movies, and listening to a lot of music. And so now when like it actually matters, I have all of that material that that kind of actually works well in my life. And um, so like, I've said to kind of friends in those kind of conversations is like, would I have liked to change things when I was younger? I was like, yeah, maybe, but ultimately I wouldn't have kind of the skills and knowledge I have now if like I had a better social life when I was young, then I might be kind of boring now.
Yeah, it really develops your character and you as a person depending on how your experience in your younger life goes, because all the knowledge and all the experience that you build up then, if you lost that or you change that, it could completely change your character as as you are now.
Yeah So like that's kind of like my biggest kind of advice towards younger students is and kind of young adults, and is that like uh it's sometimes it's not going to be great and it might downright be awful. But like ultimately it doesn't matter, and it will get better. High school to anyone interesting is never easy.
No.
Because the people that find it kind of socially easy are super boring now.
Yeah. So my last question, do you have any advice for young artists or middle school students or just students in general?
Yeah, so mostly kind of that, and don't be afraid of failure. That we culturally kind of have a problem with failure. As a fail, it's a sign of weakness, which is total complete nonsense. Because the only people that truly succeed are the people that have failed constantly.
I mean, if you look at all the scientists, they failed so many times until they succeeded.
And like science is kind of a great mindset for failure. Is you not only like learn from failures, but you expect failures. Because if you don't fail, you're doing it wrong. You if you get it right all the time, then you're not challenging yourself.
Exactly.
And like I look back on kind of some of my early photographs and they are terrible. And some of my early art is just like, I look back, like, at the time I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I look back and it was like, oh man, this is awful.
Yeah, I do the same thing all the time.
But I learned, I can clearly see where I learned. It's like, oh, this aspect of it was what was interesting, but everything else was bad. It's like, but that's what I kept on.
Yeah. There are certain things when I look back at my own art, like you can notice I kept this one thing, but I scrapped this thing. Like what in the I want to say the focus of my style and anatomy, and oh my gosh, one of my bracelets just fell off. It some of it changes and some of it stays the same. It really depends on how because I follow a lot of artists and things on social media, and I have a lot of idols in my life that I look up to, and their style inspires me. I don't necessarily copy it, but like I'll take little things from their style and add it to mine, and I just generally want to improve it. And if you look back at your own art, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You can tell where you improved.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a famous kind of quote that's attributed to Henri Cartier-Bresson, who's kind of a famous kind of French photographer.
Yeah.
He kind of coined the term the decisive moment. And it's all about kind of capturing the right moment and when to click that shutter. But the quote that he's kind of most famously attributed to is that is along the lines of that you take your first good photograph after your 10th after taking 10,000 photographs.
Yeah.
And it's really like, yeah, like, you know, it's the repetitiveness of doing it. And so at this point, like, you know, I can more often than not frame a photograph and it's like, well, that's going to be a good photograph.
Yeah.
But no, because I've shot so much that I know what's going to work and not. But then there's always kind of the wonderful surprises that happen and allow for that, like the beautiful failures.
Mm-hmm.
But it's about keeping at it.
Yeah.
And work past the failure to the idea basically is to fail so often that you learn to fail less.
Yeah, just staying determined through the failures, I'm sure.
Yeah. And like and one of the things that I teach or I try and kind of tell kind of any age groups of students is that you can create projects just to learn a skill, and it doesn't have to be in like a good project.
Yeah, I know as somebody who draws, you sketch things all the time as practice, and they don't necessarily look good. They're not something you need to be proud of. It's just to improve on it.
Yeah. And then I guess the other kind of piece of advice I kind of have for, well, anybody is that no one knows what they're doing.
Yep.
Like, you know, especially like kind of as a kid, like, you know, you I mean, I always did. Everyone kind of looks up to adults and being like,
Yeah.
oh man, I can't wait till like you know, I know what I'm doing. No one knows. You know, and if this pandemic hasn't shown that like, you know, no one knows what they're doing. Like it's all about just trying to, like, you know, do your best. And so like don't kind of be hard on yourself for like, you know, or try and kind of release some of the anxiety of if you're kind of uncomfortable in a situation. That's fine, you know. Because, you know, the other adults basically have just learned to hide the fact that they don't know what
they don't know what they're doing. Yeah, I feel like the media definitely puts, like, you know, people who are in the spotlight, celebrities necessarily, they put a lot of pressure on them to know what they're doing. And like, as soon as one makes a mistake, their whole entire fan base freaks out because they realize that the person is not perfect. They're a human being just like us. Like, just because somebody has $1 million in their bank account and they can sing or something, it doesn't mean that they're the most perfect person in the world. Everybody's going to make a mistake. And I feel like the media really enforces what you're saying. Is it enforces the fact that it makes you think people are perfect, and people are just not perfect. They're human beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the last thing is a piece of advice that kind of most professors in art school have given at one point or another, is specifically art related, is if you can be happy doing something else in your life, go do that.
Yeah.
Art is very hard to try and make a living off of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you can find work like I have, uh, where you use that skill,
Yeah.
but the kind of the fallacy of the art star kind of gallery world is that all the art 90% of all artists that are kind of like supporting themselves on art uh, were well connected and most likely wealthy beforehand.
Yeah, no, I've realized myself that I'm not going to be able to do art as a career because I am not, I don't know famous artists. I don't have a lot of money. Like it's not something that I can do as a career. So I'm trying to branch out and find other things to be interested in and make a living off of. And it's something I do want to not necessarily get a degree in, but study at least a little bit because I want to be able to do it on the side, do commissions and things like that for people, but it's not something I want to focus on because you can't necessarily make a complete living on art because there's a lot of struggling artists.
Yeah, and it's and you basically just like if art is the thing you definitely want to do, uh you basically just have to realize that at least 10 years
Yeah.
it's going to be incredibly hard.
Yeah.
um, and and that's like you just have to kind of go in knowing that,
Yeah.
and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But I see way too many people, especially people that I kind of went to school with or grad school with, that they don't make any art at all anymore.
Yeah.
They got into the real world and it was too hard for them, and it ultimately kind of killed their desire to make art. So
Exactly. That's another reason.
I advocate like learn other skills that you can do, learn as many skills as you can that you're interested in, so that you can find work doing whatever you need to do to survive, but keep the passion on doing your own art for the sake of doing art.
Yeah, my dad, he said that, his dad once said, well, you like working on cars, then don't get a job working on cars because then you're not going to want to work on your own car anymore. Because like if you continue to burn out your interests and you do it and you overwork yourself and you don't ever want to do it anymore because, if you're doing art as a job, that means you have to have, it out at a certain time to give it to your client or, if it's commissioned, but like, or you have to sell it and you have to make a bunch of pieces and like, that's a lot of pressure on yourself to do that. And then you might not want to do it for fun anymore. So that's another reason why I personally don't want to do it as, my full-time career. Because if I try to do that as my full-time career, I might lose the interest of doing it, which I don't want to happen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a perfect example. And like, I worked as a film editor for a while in New York,
Yeah.
uh, and um, after I left that industry, it took 6 years before I was able to do my own video art again.
Yeah.
I just got burned out, and
Yeah,
like,
it burns you out.
like I'm not gonna. It's like so like and that's another kind of reason why I have so many interest in art is that um, I can step away from one of them.
Yeah,
And
if it gets burned out, you always want to have a section option.
yep, and then it'll come back, and like
Yeah.
I think that's another kind of reason why people that kind of box themselves into one thing burn out and then just give up entirely.
Yeah.
Uh, where and I think that's a point where I was able to kind of survive through that, where like
Yeah.
okay, so I wasn't making any video art for myself because I was doing that as a job.
Yeah.
Um, so then I was doing photography and sound and printmaking.
Yeah.
Or I was doing printmaking as a job for a while and printing kind of a lot of T-shirts. So
Yeah.
then I was doing like kind of sound and photo for myself, and
Yeah.
and just having that bit of kind of exercise of your creativity is just like not only just super important for yourself but just culturally kind of important. Like I always like to say that the US just does not do a good job at recognizing artists, Like,
No, it doesn't.
like it's Belgium. I got to meet a couple artists from Belgium that their government, if you kind of prove you're a working artist,
Mhm.
and there's kind of certain things you have to kind of achieve to prove that you're a working artist, then they pay you a salary to make art.
Yeah, my aunt is an artist and she lived in Belgium for a while. She lived there for a couple of years actually. I remember because we never saw her when we were younger because she lived there to do art because that she doesn't make she lives in Virginia now and she doesn't make a living, you know, because it's hard to find art and, you know, people who want your art and stuff. So, you know, I'm sure there was another reason she lived there too. I mean, she likes to travel and stuff, but you know, I'm sure one of the reasons there is she could probably find work more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just it's respected in a lot of other countries that
Yeah.
is here. Because I like to kind of, you know, make a point to be like, well, you go through history and who's remembered.
Exactly. One of the main things that we learn in history is about the art and the architecture.
Yeah, culture. Like,
Yeah.
the architects of culture, whether it be kind of architecture, you know, statues, art, paintings, you
Yeah.
know, music, writers, you know, you know, do we remember the accountants? Not so much.
Oh,
So then you just kind of have to make your decision on kind of what kind of life you want to have, and do you want, like, you know, the kind of the comfort of security,
yeah.
um, um, and like I've never had a problem finding work, uh, but, like, you know, it's not always the greatest of paying jobs.
Yeah.
I can support the, you know, I can support myself,
Yeah.
but I'm not about to buy a house, you know, and but I made that decision a long time ago. It's like I don't care about that. I don't want the house with the white picket fence, like, you know, the
Yeah.
I want a life of kind of experiencing new things and visiting
Yeah.
places and creating the what's kind of inside me, and kind of get it out, um and when I made that decision, everything else was kind of easy.
Yeah, I completely understand. I definitely have the same point of view there. I want to have a life where I can experience a bunch of different things and I don't want to have to worry about settling down and all of that other stuff, you know, the fancy house, the fancy car, all that. I don't need that in life. I mean, I really like animals. I am very passionate about animals. I have a parrot and a snake
Nice.
and I want to get more, so that's the only reason I think that I would have to get a bigger house if I wanted animals,
Yeah,
but other than that, I mean, I want to, you know, be able to experience
that's
everything.
a great decision. That's a great reason to kind of make that decision, is like,
Yeah.
you know, having animals and stuff, and like,
Yeah.
uh and I think eventually I'd like to get back to, I grew up with a lot of animals,
Yeah.
it was wonderful, but like right now, like, you know, I rent a small room, uh and then I've got, like, you know, this space that I work on,
Yeah.
and I don't need much, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I know Miss Turk said that she had parrots.
Yeah, we had two parrots when my brother and I were growing up, a Senecal and an African gray.
Yeah, I have an Amazon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
African grays are really pretty though. Anyways, I think that is all of the questions I have.
Alrighty, yeah.
So I'm gonna wrap this up only because I don't know what class it is anymore. Plus, I don't have any more questions. So,
Bye.
alrighty, thank you so much.